also live all together from Venice here. You can, of course, join us in person here if you happen to be at the Excelsior or online on our platform, europeanfilmforum.eu. Because yes, we as Europeans can navigate the road to recovery, and even more, our cinema and audiovisual industry are bouncing back and reemerging in a more agile, innovative, resilient, and sustainable version. So this morning, we'll see the challenges and opportunities coming with our ecosystem's reinvention. We'll definitely dive in the financial and regulatory tools which can empower those changes, and we'll talk to the women and men leading this sector and who have implemented innovative solutions, which are worth looking at, of course. So you can, of course, join us and join the conversation on Slido, even here, if you have a chance to be in person with us. You'll have, a chance and opportunity to ask your questions to our panelists. To do so, super easy. You just have to scan this QR code, or just, when you're on Slido, get to the reference R1, 8 and 9, and you'll be able to post your question. I'll be happy, and I'll do my best actually to be your spokesperson on this very stage. Now that we're all set, let's open this edition of the European Film Forum here at the 78th Mostra with its president, Roberto Cicuto. And it's a pleasure to have you with us, as always, Roberto.
Pardon, first mistake. Benvenuti, welcome, bienvenue a tout le monde. Grazie alla Commissione Europea per essere fedele a questo appuntamento, per noi molto importante.
Thus, for this meeting, allow me to play my role of president of the 78th Film Festival and the Biennale at large. Seeing so many people in this room, as we normally see during this festival in theaters, but also many people, as we have seen at the Architecture Biennale this year, after the theater festival and the dance festival, is, I must say, a great pleasure. I must thank for this my team, the authorities that have supported us, and all of you, the audience, the professionals who are working here, because without your sense of responsibility, the necessary measures of safety and securities that have been implemented couldn't be as effective as they are, and only so can we be back together in person. What happened this year as against last year? We have had to maintain some safety measures despite the vaccines. It is true that this year we have delegations and people coming not only from Europe but also from the rest of the world, and this has made it possible to use technology in a very important way, as they allow us to reach everybody, using them to make access easier in public places. Thanks to technology, we have managed to create a system of both badges and green pass are automatically controlled with your accreditation card. I'm saying this because there are other ways of interpreting new technologies as replacing the need to be here in person. We reject this point of view. We know this. We have to. We see how people take part in the events. Also, behind a face mask, you see smiles, and people is happy to personally get in touch with others. So new technologies can really support culture and the overall general debate this meeting is part of. The Biennale of Venice has started this year a very important process of carbon neutrality. Already from this year, we have started working in order to collect all necessary data and the certificates that are necessary to implement measures to contain CO2 emissions. This year we won't be able to show these measures, but we will economically compensate funding some European projects that have already been started so that CO2 emission reduction can be supported with our funds. This is something we are doing in a totally transparent approach. We have prepared protocols for those who organize the events, but these protocols will also involve the audience with training and education activity. The Venice Biennale, as other catalyzers on the national territory, will benefit of a very important funding on the National Resilience and Recovery Plan, funds that will be exclusively devoted to infrastructural investments. Clearly, a city like Venice, where all critical aspects are coming to the light, a city that is an international stage, all investments must be considered with great attention. All investments in Biennale, Giardini, Arsenale, in Lido will also consider accessible infrastructures for the citizens that will remain in place also when our festivals and exhibitions are over. We will create a dialogue in order to find non-discriminatory systems to allow for a mass tourism to turn into sustainable tourism. Nothing can be considered in isolation. Everything has to be connected with the different problems we have to face. These investments will have room for energy efficiency, and from next year onwards, these protocols will be in place. The certification will be provided by RINA, our certifying institution. We think it is very important to document, to let people know what we are doing and what are the results of our actions. It is very easy to speak, make great announcements, and not to implement what you have planned. The audiovisual industry, the world of culture, of live entertainment, has had to face difficult times. The governments have proposed their support. In Italy, we have finally obtained a regulation for workers who work in the world of entertainment. They will no longer be temporary workers. They have obtained a pension system and a welfare system for them, social security measures. We hope these new measures will be applied all over the European Union. I leave space to your debate. Thank you all for being here, and see you here next year, I hope.
Thank you very, very much, Roberto Cicotto, for stepping by the stage. I know, your planning is just like one of the presidents, so you have literally to run from meetings to screenings. Thank you so much again for your time here on this stage. And yes, we have everything. We have sustainability, we have technology, we have, of course, the recovery fund. So let's see during our debates how we're going to make the most of it. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, everybody.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go for an hybrid, of course, edition. So our next guest is definitely joining us online, live from Brussels, Giuseppe Abamonte from the European Commission, DG Connect, Director of Media Policy. Giuseppe, it's your time.
Yes, buongiorno a tutti e un saluto da una Bruxelles.
Hello from a finally sunny Brussels after an autumn-like summer. I'm very honored to be able to make this opening speech, which I will say in English, considering the international nature of this meeting.
Thanking Roberto Circuto for hosting this event at the Venice Production Bridge and Biennale for the excellent cooperation. I am mortified, Roberto, if I may, not to be there physically and to do it at a distance, but you have my word of honor that next year I will do my utmost to be there and to meet you also in person. The Film Forum is an excellent opportunity to take stock of where we are and what are the challenges and opportunities identified by the industry at large in this peculiar time of our life. It is well known by now that the pandemic has profoundly affected the audiovisual ecosystem. Today, we can discuss the changes that are transforming the industry and how we can try and turn this crisis into an opportunity which hopefully will give Europe a sort of competitive edge. The European strategy is structured around two main building blocks. A modern regulatory framework which supports the creative sector and protects European citizens, and a financial framework that supports the recovery of the industry and its transformation, so to embrace digital technologies. So digital technologies are key to reap new market opportunities. And the financial support part of our strategy is at the heart of the media and audiovisual action plan, which was adopted last year by the Commission. So let me say a few words about the regulatory framework. So the recent audiovisual and copyright reforms have introduced a number of new requirements which apply to internet content sharing platforms, so the internet giants, and also to VOD providers, video on demand providers, with a view to creating a level playing field. Amongst the new rules, the Audiovisual Media Services Directive imposes now a minimum quota of European works on VOD platforms. So the minimum quota is 30% of European works. It also allows member states to impose financial obligations on VOD platforms targeting consumers in their territory. It is therefore important that all member states which have not yet transposed the directive, including Italy, do it as soon as possible, because there is a very important opportunity for the Italian industry. The implementation of the new copyright rules also is fundamental in order to reinforce the position of European creators and the creative industries. In June, the Commission adopted its guidance on the application of the famous Article 17, so the value gap provision, which introduces new rules applying on online content sharing platforms. So once implemented, these new rules will increase the licensing and monetization opportunities for right holders, for European right holders, ensure transparency in their relationship with platforms, and protect users' rights. As you know, the deadline for the transposition, for translating the law into the European law into national law, expired in June. And I understand that the transposition process in Italy is well advanced and will be finalized. But again, my message is that the quicker it is implemented, the better. So now let me say a few words about the media action plan, the media and audiovisual action plan, and tell you where we are. So it was adopted in December of last year. And as I said at the beginning, it aims to help industry get back on track and also foster innovation in order to enhance the competitiveness of the industry. The ambition of the plan, which combines a range of EU programs which are relevant to the audiovisual industry, has been made possible by the adoption of Next Generation EU and a reinforced EU budget for the period 2021-2027. I welcome that several member states have responded to the Commission call and included the audiovisual sector as a priority sector in their national recovery plans. It is the case, for instance, of France with the Plan Filière Cinema, Spain with the Audiovisual Hub, and Italy with the plans for the development of the film industry, including infrastructure and studios, support to audiovisual heritage, and training activities. And so allow me to mention in this context the Progetto Cinecittà, which thanks also to EU funds, should revamp the historical studios and also address the digital and green transitions and skill gaps in the Italian, but also in the European industry, because you may have people coming to Italy to study, or films or production being shot in Rome. The Commission is making good progress in preparing and delivering on the concrete actions foreseen in the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan. And please listen to me carefully on this, because it is about financial opportunities. It's about actions which are in your interest. So first of all, we are now focused on the technical preparation to Media Invest, which is an innovative investment platform which is being developed in the framework of a new financial instrument called Invest EU. So this Media Invest will be dedicated, so will aim at leveraging private equity investment in audiovisual productions, for example, by reducing the risks associated with investments in film production and distribution. The estimated budget is 400 million euros over the next 7 years. So Media Invest will help pour more ambitious budgets on content with strong market potential. It's a little bit like the guarantee facility, which has mobilized a lot of loans, a lot of borrowings. So because of Media Invest, because of this equity investment, the attractiveness of some audiovisual content project will increase. So will increase. We are now on track to launch Media Investment already by the end of this year, with a kickstart funding from Creative Europe and Invest EU. So there is something, bear it in mind, something which is very, very important. I would also briefly mention that in the meantime, we have published online an interactive funding guide to help audiovisual companies navigate the funding European sea, and apply for tailored support across the range of EU financial programs. An important component of our vision is that the EU is ultimately seen as a sort of integrated single market for the production and distribution of audiovisual works. And this means further encouraging co-productions which travel better, and collaboration between market players.
Recording in progress.
And a wider distribution in order to improve the availability of content across national borders. As announced in the Media and, As announced in the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan, we will launch soon a stakeholder dialogue with the audiovisual sector in order to agree on concrete steps to improve access to and availability of audiovisual content across the EU. Allow me to say that the availabilities of accessing content, accessing quality content, quality European content, across borders is still an ordeal. The dialogue will allow to explore, together with industry, new forms of exploitation and distribution of audiovisual works, for example, to encourage the online availability of films, which have been released only in a few member states, or all films which are very difficult to get by. On Europa Creativa and the media program, so the Creative Europe Media Program is one of the key funding sources. The new budget of almost 1.5 billion represents a spectacular increase of over 80% as compared to the old budget. It is not just a sign of its relevance in supporting recovery, but also recognition of its success in instilling collaboration and innovation at European level. The renewed media program is in business and implementation has already started. The first annual work program was adopted in May. It represents an evolution and we have introduced some innovations such as targeting the development of co-productions, supporting networks of VOD platforms, and supporting innovative tools, innovative storytelling, for example. A number of calls for proposals have already been published, for example, in support of cinemas, festivals, creation of content, distribution of films, and more. Important thing is that the call for cinemas, the budget for the calls for cinemas increased by 50%. And, you know, things are on track. So everything is in hand. Currently now, 9 out of 13 of the 13 media calls which were launched and 1 out of 2 cross-sectoral calls have been closed, so were closed already. And something which is important is that in terms of expected number of applications, there have been just minor variations. So we are almost in a sort of business as usual scenario, which is good news. Another very important strand of the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan is the technological transformation. So a strategy of deep transformation is key for ensuring resilience of the sector and competitiveness. Data analysis for audience development, for production, and for the distribution of audiovisual work is a key innovation driver. So data analytics, the big data. Therefore, as part of the Media Action Plan, we have proposed the creation of a media data space. So there are data spaces, industrial data spaces everywhere. The time has come to have a sole dedicated media data space, which would enable collaboration and sharing of audience or content data and metadata. The first call for proposals has been launched under Horizon Europe, and it regards the tools for the flourishing of this media data space, such as, for example, copyright management and data management tools. And the second call for proposal for the infrastructure, so for creating a secure infrastructure for the hosting and sharing of the data, will be funded by Digital Europe, and the second call will be launched shortly. We also believe that Europe can become a leader in immersive content, including virtual reality and augmented reality. I do not need to stress this here in Venice, where the Biennale has embraced virtual reality with vision and creativity now for a long time. So in line with the Media Action Plan, we are launching a VR, AR, so virtual reality and augmented reality industry coalition to stimulate cooperation across industry sectors. The timeline, so our timeline is to hold the first workshops with stakeholders in October in order to discuss concretely the objectives and the strategic objectives of this coalition and the scope of our cooperation. We have also launched a VR media lab through a call for proposals under Horizon Europe. So there is another opportunity which aims to support the next generation of VR projects in the audiovisual sector. Furthermore, as part of our comprehensive, media and audiovisual action plan, we are active on two cross-cutting issues, so namely sustainability and diversity. Roberto Cicuto spoke about sustainability in his opening remarks. The EU has launched the EU Green Deal, and the audiovisual sector has an important role to play. We launched a green dialogue with the industry in June, and we are impressed by the wide consensus on two aspects. So the first is that the audiovisual industry needs to make its full contribution as a matter of urgency. And the second is that there is a need to cooperate at European level in order to be more impactful. We will now deepen the technical discussions with a focus on on the possibility to introduce a carbon calculators for film productions, for example, and the opportunities or the opportunity and the opportunities to introduce an EU green label in the audiovisual field. It is also necessary that the audiovisual sector embraces diversity and inclusion. And in this spirit, the European Commission launched in June in Cannes a vast awareness campaign on the inclusion of women in the cinema and the news media sector. And the name of the campaign is Character Her. So in conclusion, I would like to quote Commissioner Breton's intervention in Lille last week, where he said that if we want to be stronger, we need to think Europe. We need to think at continental level, because we are a continent and we need to work together, capitalize on our strengths and taking advantage of our great internal market. So this is my main message today. Audiovisual companies should consider the European Union as their native market, a natural playground for the creative production and distribution activities. And of course, you can fully count on the Commission's full support to make this happen. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe. You can hear the applause here from Venice. Of course, we were really focusing and trying to keep track of your intervention. A lot of solutions out there, a lot of tools, a lot of, again, solutions. We'll definitely dive in with our upcoming panel. Thank you so much. And thanks for referring to Series Mania and our little dialogue a little while ago on last Tuesday in Lille, of course. And now we're getting back to in-person keynotes, opening speeches, of course, with Nicola Borelli, is the Director General for Cinema and Audiovisual at the Italian Ministry for Cultural Heritage.
Buongiorno a tutti,
Good morning, everybody. I will speak in Italian. I want to thank the organizers of this meeting that is enabling us to take stock of the situation of the cultural world, of the cultural industry, in particular as regards Italy and the audiovisual and cinema sector, which is the sector I daily deal with. Having to give a general idea without entering into details on what the Italian government is doing for culture, it is important to have some figures. As all figures, these do not fully reflect the sense of our contributions, but they can explain how we have moved. The budget of the Ministry of Culture is approximately 2 billion euros a year. That also include the cost for staff, the functioning of the structure itself, which accounts for 19,000 employees all over the territory. The budget was much lower in past years, so we were saying 2 billion euros a year. For the COVID emergency, in the 2 years 2020-2021, at the 6th of August 2021, the Ministry has allocated additional resources for 4 billion euros. So it is a very strong contribution also from a quantitative point of view that has touched all sectors of culture, cinema, the workers of the entertainment industry, and in these figures we do not include a structural contribution on the welfare and pension system for entertainment workers, where unfairness conditions existed so far. That sector has to be dealt with by the Ministry of Labour. Live entertainment, publishing, and other sectors. There are a number of items that are involved in this allocation. In the national plan for resistance and resilience, recovery and resilience plan, 6.7 billion euros have been allocated for the cultural sector, to be compared to the standard allocation of 2 billion euros. There are different sectors that will be impacted by these contributions. There will be very important interventions that are evidence of a new pace in the involvement of the government with the culture, not only the cultural heritage, but also as regards cultural activities as well, cinema, audiovisual. The audiovisual sector is part of these. In the Recovery and Resilience Plan, we also see the Progetto Cinecittà, the Cinecittà project, but also resources for the creative industry at large, that are located on the Italian territory independently of their country of origin. Besides the quantitative aspect, figures can be easily found on the website of the Ministry of Culture. Besides figures, the Ministry is also committed on developing the regulations for the sector. In the Council of Ministers of the 5th of August 2021, a number of decree laws have been passed that reflect the audiovisual directive and the copyright directive by the European Commission. We still have time until the 8th of November to obtain the final approval. So by the end of the year, we should have approved these two important tools to regulate the sector. We are also receiving the SAT-CAB directive, and as Mr. Abamonte was saying, we have a working group in the government with Minister Colau to develop the DSA regulation, which is an extremely important regulation that should be approved within 2023 and we'll have to become complementary to the other regulation tools that have been received in the Italian law coming from the European legislation, and it refers to a number of cultural services on the territory and online. It is an extremely a moment when we have to concretely intervene to minimize the impact of the pandemic on the cultural sector at large, but we should also start planning how this crisis will impact the consumption models for spectators or in general users of cultural products online, for example. In Italy, we are very concerned for the theatrical distribution of cinema works. The results are not at all satisfactory. They are worse than last year's result, which means that something deep is happening, something deep we should respond to, not trying to bring time back to what the situation was before the pandemic, because consumption models in the future for audiovisual products will probably be totally different in the future, and they will hardly go back to what they were before the pandemic. Rather than running after the past, we should all together try and understand, and this is what we're trying to do in the next 3 weeks in my ministry. We must act all together as rapidly as possible, because cinema theaters are really suffering a lot. The government will certainly implement extraordinary measures for this sector, but we cannot go on with emergency measures for a long time. We should somehow reinvent the very model of cinema theaters, and this is something the sector itself should do, analyzing the requests of the spectators and trying to adopt the necessary strategies to involve the audience. I can therefore say that the Italian government, the ministry, has worked with great efforts during the pandemic. I think the sector should recognize this. We are just halfway through. We have made many efforts. We have allocated many resources. From this moment onwards, we will have to coordinate our measures and the tools available in connection with the community measures. We should implement the necessary measures so that the new world that will emerge after this pandemic is over can be easily shared by our operators that will be on the market in the cultural and economic sector.
Mr. Borelli deserves some applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Borelli. So, yep, that's definitely set the scene for our debates upcoming there. I mean, a lot of information out there, of course. I guess that Giuseppe Abamonte will be happy to know that actually the transposition of the SVMA directive is on its way, definitely upcoming here in Italy for November the 8th, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, of course, the word has changed. So one of the major questions we'll definitely dive in with our upcoming panelists will be this idea if we can, support this hybrid type of strategy that we are having from lockdowns in terms of heritage of new ways to have audiences meet compelling content, or if we have to support more theatrical windows. This is definitely one of the main questions we'll be diving in. Thank you so much again, Mr. Borelli, for your time on stage. And now, okay, let's switch to our upcoming panel. You're released from duty here on this stage, so if you want to, if you want to stay with us, you're welcome to stay with us, of course. But if you need to go run. Okay, run. Let's go. So again, thanks a million for those. Opening actually keynotes and speeches. We are definitely going to switch to our discussion format again, an hybrid type of format here on stage. 3 in-person guests and 1 guest online, because yes, guess what? Studios, platform audiences, everyone craves European work. This is, of course, some great news for us, and this European content appeal comes at a time where and when lines between linear, online, and theatrical are definitely more blurred than ever. So the pandemic, of course, has shed a light on some dramatic changes on content consumption, of course, and also the way audiences connect with great content. So behind and beyond the short-term heavy disruption, how can the current trends dive and drive the future of innovation? Can they lead to a more resilient and competitive industry? This is definitely the discussion we're going to dive in, and to do so, this is my great pleasure to be joined here in person by our guest, Jan Runge, from Sinovate, Stefano Massenzi from Lucky Red, Choime Ripoll from Filmin. I'm really trying to not mess with your names out there. And of course, Marie-Isabelle Cote, the General Secretary of Arte GEIE. She'll be joining us live from Strasbourg in a few seconds. Please, gentlemen, grab a seat and grab a mic. You can open the mic if you want to join the conversation, of course. And Marie-Isabelle, of course, is with us live from Strasbourg. If you guys have a question or want to join the conversation, you know how to do it. You just have to scan the QR code out there for Slido and join us. And of course, I'll try to do my best to be your spokesperson here on this stage. So, all that being said, first question to you, and we're going to tour around the panel, maybe starting with Marie-Isabelle out there. Because yes, of course, the world is different nowadays than it was way before the pandemic happened. So I'm kind of curious of what are your takeaways from those past few months. Marie-Isabelle, how is your work at Arte different from what it was back in 2020, or before 2020 happened, actually?
Thank you. So hello, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me well.
Absolutely.
Great. So perhaps a few words before I come to your question, Marjorie, on what we do at Artis. While the streaming ecosystem indeed is becoming more and more complex, Artis' challenge is to become the European cultural benchmark label on linear and non-linear channels, and for most of it in 6 European languages. So our European dimension is already established thanks to the support of the EU for our 4 additional languages, which are Italian, Spanish, Polish, and English, since 2015. Our aim is to bring European quality content in a very broad sense, from performing arts to factual programs, information, documentaries, European series, and of course, European movies. So we have an authentic European editorial ambition for a very long time. % of our projects program are European. All the catalog is available in France and Germany, and 70% of it in all European Union and United Kingdom and the countries of so the EFTA countries. So we set on linguistic diversity as well. We have 7 programs a year in 6 languages, and they're all offering in French and German. And 2 keywords are as well, which we heard already a lot in the keynotes before, co-productions, of course, and circulation of European work. So perhaps a few takeaways. So the panel this morning is about resilience, and I think everybody will agree that COVID crisis as this has been a test for all the society, but for the whole sector as well. For us, and I think for all the streaming platforms, it's a bit of an ambivalent thing because media consumption increased massively during the pandemic. But so it's good. So we were able to reach out to new audiences, but at the same time, new difficulties occurred. So we think at Arte that the pandemic allowed our contents and our efforts to be more visible to the audiences. They were able, the audiences, to enjoy our singularity, our eclectic cultural programming and its richness. That enable us to enlarge our audiences, especially among young audiences, so the 15 to 35, which is a very good point to us, and to and that's the case for all our vectors, so the broadcast and all our platforms and distribution vectors. So it's a very good point, and we want to capitalize on that, of course. At the same time, we had to adapt very quickly to a situation that was very challenging for the whole sector and, of course, as a company. Coronavirus forced cultural life, for instance, to shut down overnight. So we, as at Arte, had tried to play a big role with the cultural sector to be able to bring performing arts to audiences. So we launched several initiatives last year very quickly, and we are continuously doing so. With concerts, for instance, from nightclubs all over the world every night for a very long time, and from a wide range of operations that had a lot of success. And we were able to do that. We were able as well to innovate. We had to innovate in this time, of course, the home office situation, but more of that, the digitalization of some functions, so remote presentation, production in new conditions. And there was some things that might appear very small that really give new opportunities from translated virtual meetings that enable us, of course, as a multilingual and multi-territorial company to work better together. And so we think those are new things that we need to capitalize on, and perhaps that we will be able to, thanks to those innovation and to this resilience, to cooperate better among Europeans, to co-produce better, and to make the circulation of European works work better. And I think a last point perhaps is that it enabled us to test things that might be of use in another challenge that we will have, which is to become more sustainable and diverse, of course. And I think we tested things that we will be able to build up and that can be of use for that.
Thank you so much, Marie-Isabelle, for those takeaways. So yes, we love to see the glass half full here at the European Film Forum. So let's see if our other panelists are that optimistic and have, been able to use this pandemic as a test and learn experience. Probably let's start according to your part actually on the audiovisual and film ecosystem. Let's start with you, probably Stefano at Lookered. Of course, you are a distributor and you do consider distributing film as a publishing company, if I may. So what are your takeaways? Was it, like this time to test and learn new innovative solutions?
Thank you. Yes, we are publishers. It's so true. And we have realized recently that we were publishers and not distributors, and there's a deep difference between the two words. So we are, as you said, distributors. We are also producers. So this period has been very different because, of course, in terms of production, there has been and there is a high demand. there is a high support everywhere, at local level, at regional level, at European level. In terms of distribution, it's been an interesting time and, of course, a very difficult time. I think there are two themes, two words that came out of the presentations. One is from President Cikuto that said presence. I think that as social animals, we need to get out of our houses and get back to social life. And this is the theatrical experience, which is completely different. The other concept that came out is from Director Borrelli is that we need to analyze what is going on, because we, at this precise moment, we don't know what the future will bear. We don't know if the effects on the box office, to be very pragmatic, are stable effects, if people will come back, if they're just scared, if the mask is a problem, if being next to somebody else is the problem. In Italy, we have the privilege of having very serious limitation with a green pass to get into a theater, and that may be a restriction, a limitation, or maybe a help. The summer doesn't help, because in Italy the summer is not the best period to analyze data. So we will see the next couple of months what's really going on. What has come out of the pandemic is not the pandemic itself. The effect is not the pandemic, but it's speeding up a process towards the windowing, which is a big issue, because I do agree that we need to protect the theaters, but we came from one extreme and we're going towards another extreme, so we need to find the right middle solution. And there has been a speed that we've already seen coming regarding the fact that going to the theater is an experience that needs to be special, but in terms of content, more than the experience itself. The experience to go to the theater is different and has always been different and will be different in the theater, because seeing a movie on a big screen is different than seeing a movie on your mobile. But there is more selection because there is competition. And the field is not only cinema. We have the platforms, but of course we have everything else. The concerts, the exhibitions, just going out, a drink, the restaurant. So it's a very strong competition on the use of leisure time.
And we'll definitely dive into more windowing in a few seconds from now. Thank you so much, Stefano, for those opening remarks. Let's actually travel to show me here around the table for filming, because I'm going to ask the very same question to a platform, a European platform, doing very well actually with audiences.
So yeah, I should say I'm optimistic, no? I'm from Spain, so summer in Spain is same in Italy, so not the best time for manage a cinema neither platform. Yes, filming is a VOD platform, but we also are theatrical distributors. So basically we acquire rights and release those films exclusively on cinema. So we do support cinemas. Then we are also a production company, because we have just produced and co-produced our first TV series and our first 4 feature films. And then we run a film festival, so I would say it's like 360 platforms, something like this, no? In the 4 sides. Yeah, the question is not, of course, during the pandemic, all the VOD platforms experienced like a huge growth. This is we already know that. The question is, what will happen from now on? We'll be able to convince our subscribers to keep the subscription now that the let's say the COVID is over, or at least over. How will we be able to manage our platform in front of these huge competitors, global competitors? What will be the window in terms of for the window in release for the 8 titles, let's say, so the blockbusters, but also the small independent European productions. Basically, the 90% of the movies that are screened here in Venice, and the movies that probably are the core of our catalog. To be honest, as a platform, we need to focus on content, on cooperation, on marketing, on technology, on innovation. So those are the 5 key aspects in terms of filming. Probably we'll discuss further on those key aspects. In content, for a VOD platform in Europe, it's important to have exclusive content, to produce content, and to secure library and so heritage content. Second, in cooperation, work with film festivals. I strongly support the hybrid model for some of the film festivals. You can run a film festival as well. Work together closely with movie theaters. We need to keep listening each other and work together. So I think cinema experience is important, and as a VOD platform, we will have somehow huge benefits from a good theatrical experience. Let me give you an example, and I'll finish now. With Annette, probably you know Annette. Annette is a Leo Carax movie. It won Cannes Film Festival, Best Director in Cannes Film Festival. Annette is a musical with Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. We took the rights for Spain, and we released it in cinemas late August, on the same day that Amazon released the film online in the States. So Filmin decides to put the film in theaters instead of putting online. This is why it's important to still have local platforms for European territories. And good sign, we managed to do 40,000 admissions in Spain, which is a huge number during this time. In fact, we have doubled the number of admissions that the latest Leo Carax movie, Holy Motors, which managed to do only 20,000 admissions in Spain. So this is another way of cooperating with movie theaters. And in terms of technology and marketing, data, and it's important to be bold in front of these global platforms. Or you are bold or you are dead, basically.
Absolutely. It's all about the data. Thank you so much for those insights. And now, well, Jan, I know you're running Synovate, which is an extraordinary innovation and innovative initiative when it comes to finding more solutions, actually.
Hello, thanks for having me. And maybe just a quick comment before I introduce the project on the excellent statements earlier on. I thought, first of all, I think one should congratulate the European Commission and the European Union for increasing the budget of Creative Europe so significantly recently. And the money that went in, from my cinema perspective into Europa Cinemas definitely helped art house cinemas throughout Europe to come through the last 18 months. So I think that needs to be applauded. I do think that theaters will be a very big part of this new future that Mr. Borelli talked about, and cinemas are at the moment only on the road to recovery. And do I need to be closer to the
speaking of recovery?
I'd urge everyone to work together to help rebuild the theatrical experience. That's kind of as an opening. I've been working with a number of organizations and benefited of the European Innovation Hub program, Cinemas as Innovation Hubs of local communities, and we basically put together a group of art house cinemas in Ireland, Access Cinema, in Sweden, Folkets Hus Oak Parker and Folkets Bio, and in Slovenia, the Slovenian Art House Cinema Network with together 300 screens. And we basically are going to set up a digital platform for them together with a German VOD operator, Rush Lake Media. And that platform includes a number of different features, gaming, event cinema, the opportunity to book private screenings. So really helping those cinemas to re-engage with their audiences after the pandemic. And we're very grateful for the support that the European Union gave us for that.
And I guess also the entire question out there is to try to develop or reinvent or invent, per se, user experience, if I can use some geeky type of vocabulary here on the stage, to actually, try to understand better what theater of the 21st century could be or can be nowadays, right?
Absolutely, and I very much liked what you said, Stefano, about theaters competing not only with other entertainment options, but with the wealth of leisure opportunities that people have these days. And if you look into the this summer, I know that in Italy, cinema going has been relatively moderate, but in other territories, in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Scandinavia, where there has been a lot of investment into the theatrical experience over the last 10 years, the numbers have bounced back pretty significantly. And if you look into what some cinemas are doing around Europe, it's amazing. They do compete with restaurants and other leisure opportunities.
Could you actually really dive into...
That's the challenge, really. There's no huge competition between video on demand and cinema. I think the two exist in one ecosystem. There's a competition between everything else that's out there these days. I
know you have a bunch of innovative examples. Could you just dive into some of those examples, again, just to, for some inspiration here?
So I'll plug something here. I'm also working for the International Cinema Technology Association. Each year we give out awards to innovative cinemas around the world. And I just came back from the Netherlands from a cinema called the Anything Cinema, and it's the first personal on-demand cinema in the world, with very small screening rooms where you book your movie screenings in advance at the time and the date and the location where you want to see the film. I don't think that's the future of cinema, but that's certainly one future of cinema.
Yeah, but that's really interesting. I guess that, totally. I mean, we could use some of those innovative solutions out there to better understand what a theater of the 21st century could be, and this is more tailor-made type of experiences, if I can say so. So yes, you've heard it. The question is definitely if like the new strategies out there, hybrid type of strategies, are compatible with streaming, theatrical, linear, and sales, because it's also a huge part of the question out there. You've mentioned it, gentlemen, and Marie-Isabelle also mentioned it a little earlier ago. Of course, we are not, getting out of this crisis than we were used to be connected to content anymore before. But still, if we're seeing it from the perspective of, let's say, a streaming service, could be an American streaming service. Of course, European content is super appealing. We do understand why, European audiences, European markets. But still, the interesting point here is that talents seems to have, like a falling out with their own studios and platform right now. We can, of course, refer to the Scarlett Johansson example with Disney+. She's not super happy that actually Disney had this idea of releasing in theater Black Widow at the very same time they're releasing it on Disney+. We can also mention Denis Villeneuve, who actually, made the news on Friday here at La Biennale and Mostra for, openly say that, yes, he would literally rather have Dune being first released in theater so that viewers can have this incredible theater experience first before having, consuming or watching Dune on HBO Max. What does this say from, the mindset of the industry those days, when talents are the very first to speak out there and say, yes, no, I'm not sure that this hybrid strategy still stands when theaters have reopened?
I may add something. On the other side, there are a lot of directors. They are pushing their sales agents saying, okay, if you're not selling my documentary or my film to a global platform, I won't give you my next film to you. So this is another problem, and probably a problem that somehow is not Dune. We don't have a Black Widow Dune problem, facing this problem, at least in filming, Lucky Red and so on. But these kind of problems, so directors and talent, they are pushing for a global deal. And we need to, we like to keep local somehow, no? And regarding Denis Villeneuve, Scarlett Johansson, and so on, I would say it's not my problem. Because probably Disney Plus and HBO and so on, when they will have reach this 100, 200 million subscribers worldwide, they will say, okay, now stick to this 45-day windows, otherwise we'll still do 3 months, or they end it. it's up them. But in our case, what will happen? How we'll be able to manage to compete with this kind of releases with the European independent movies? No? Coming back to Annette example. So Annette has been released on Amazon, so basically it's available piracy worldwide. So to be honest, on August the 20th, the film is, if you want to download to watch Annette, in less than 5 minutes you will be able to watch it. In our case, as a VOD platform, we decide, okay, still, we do know that, but we still support local cinemas. And for that reason, I think sales agents have a key part in this ecosystem, and somehow we don't spend enough time dealing with them, talking with them, and discussing with them. Of course, maybe you can earn much more money now signing a global deal for a film, but on a mid-term and long-term, probably if you don't give these gems, these masterpieces, these A, European titles to local platforms, then with C titles or B titles, those local platforms or local distributors could not exist, couldn't survive. So this is another short sight on the Dune experience.
Well, that's really interesting, though, gentlemen. And then Marc-Isabelle, if you want to take part to the discussion, of course, you can jump in anytime. But yeah, this is really interesting because, again, in this idea of a content industry, we can see that the industry part of it is still very much a question when it comes to, again, having this incredible content and wax being distributed and actually connecting with audiences. So, I mean, Stefano, what's your take on this?
Listen, it's what Helmut was saying. It's what's happening. It is very persuading for an artist to have his film distributed in over 200 territories. We won't name the platforms because we can't.
But we have them in mind.
We cannot advertise anybody, and we shouldn't. To, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of clients. But the question here is, these movies have been produced independently many times, and then they are shown and chosen. If we continue this way, the new voices, the new directors, where are they coming from? Because it is true that it's very persuading, but at the same time, if you look at the production, the local production also of many of these operators, the cultural diversity level, the variety, is not really there. So they are exploiting an existing ecosystem, which is made of many voices, of a lot of cultural diversity that has been developed, also thanks to the media program and to our local governments throughout the decades. But then it's about business. And so we are a little bit at risk. So the point here is the new window in, the experiments, it's all extremely interesting, but we risk to throw the baby with the dirty water, as we say. Because if we weaken the theatrical business, which is absolutely needed for a lot of content, especially for the European one, Dune is made for the theaters, yes, but it's something that you can place it anywhere and people will watch it. Of course, the director is very keen and in his heart wants the movie to be shown on a big screen. And we can have a lot of examples of films that were also bought and financed by big platforms and were made for the big screen, and then they end on a mobile or on an iPad. But if we weaken that theatrical experience, we weaken the European industry in a whole, and the new voices especially. So it's like a panda.
Yeah.
It needs to be protected, not at all cost. So it's, there's a lot of elements we have to consider. The element which is good for us that I was mentioning at the beginning of the fact that we are social animals and we like to go to the theater. But if we weaken these theaters with the day and date and all of that, there needs to be a lot of thought around it. And of course, the role, we have a role, but the big players play a big role in all of this, because the big numbers, if you look at them, are coming from the big films.
Absolutely.
As you
yeah,
mentioned
totally.
as well.
Before we actually jump back to you, Jan, with more innovative solutions and the voice also of theaters that definitely are weighing this conversation. Let's jump to Marie-Isabelle, because I want to have the broadcaster perspective on this different windowing strategy out there.
So obviously I agree with a lot that has been said in terms of preserving and helping the theaters to bounce back after this very difficult time for us. So we work with the French Chronology and the German organization between theaters exploitation and then our exploitation. And I think for us it's very important to help movies that haven't been released in other countries to find their audience in Europe, and we do that actually with quite a lot of success. So we had this initiative, Keynotes, in which we work as well with theaters, and we offer once a month a movie of European origin. It's as well gender balanced with 5 female creator and 5 male creator making those movies from all over Europe. And we see, for instance, in August, I think, the Czech movie that we had has been our top 2 on our new languages. So, and it hadn't been released in several other countries we played in. So I think it's there is an audience for those movies, but I agree with what has been said in terms of preserving the diversity and regulating the platforms so that those movies will still be visible or will have a space to be seen, which is not always. It's not just it's one thing to display a movie, and it's another thing to really have the dedicated campaign in every country to help it find its audience. So, and that's what we are really trying to do with the help of the union. And I think it's there is an issue definitely in preserving diversity and being an incubator of talent, of new talents, because I think what has just been said is very important. It's that we need to seek diversity in young talents as well. And I think there is a risk if the regulation is not strong enough that we are going towards a system that won't allow this diversity anymore. So it's yeah, I think it's there are lots of risks at stake, and for us, of course, the good work we've been doing with theaters and the good windowing in place is not that much of an issue. Much more the regulation and the relationship to global platforms.
Thank you very much. And of course, we'll get back to this question of diversity in a few seconds. I can see that you are keen on asking questions. I'll definitely take those in a few minutes. But first, I mean, Jan, your perspective, of course, on this question. And then I just have a brief question about the regulation coming out there.
On which question? On the question of releases?
Yeah, exactly.
I think Stefano put it perfectly, so I wouldn't want to complement that further. And I'm obviously, I'm not speaking on behalf of cinemas. That's a job I gave up many years ago. But personally, I think when you talk about those kinds of productions, I'm certainly with the talent and think that those films need to be shown in the theater. And I think actually everybody will benefit from it. There's many more areas where one can innovate and experiment next to release strategies. So I'll just point you to one feature of this project that we're working on. We're helping cinemas launch their own VOD services. And one feature of the platform is that with every 5th transaction on the service, the user gets a voucher that can then be redeemed in the cinema. So the idea is really to create synergies between video on demand and cinema, and also to drive audiences back to the cinema. And I think that is a space that distribution, exhibition, VOD platforms still have so much to work on and collaborate on, because for audiences there isn't such a big distinction. They want to see a film obviously either in the theater or on VOD, but the sectors are still pretty siloed, and I think there's a lot of potential to bring those two worlds together.
Break those silos. Thank you so much. That's definitely one of the innovative solutions we are going to tackle in the next few minutes, because yes, when it comes to building an audiovisual sector of the next decade or the next century, let's say, we'll see, there's definitely a lot of different tools that we can rely on. Regulation is definitely part of it. Financing is also another one. Giuseppe Abamonte mentioned the Future Media Invest Fund, raising 400 million euros to invest in the sector. We also have other pieces of regulation upcoming. 6 months of discussion have been opened by Commissioner Breton on DMA and DSA, the Digital Market Act and the Digital Services Act, which are definitely going to weigh in the audiovisual sectors when it comes to setting up more coherent rules for every single stakeholders here in the digital ecosystem, and thinking about digital as one single market. Which tools would you actually pick up to build this brand new cinema sector for the next decade? Stefano first. You're my dedicated victim.
Thank you. Thank you for choosing me first, always.
See?
It's not that easy, because in terms of production I don't see big issues. I see issues in terms of content, because it's not about the volume is there, and it's about what this volume contains. So that what the future bears for us, because of course the tendency I see, but it's not that it's always been that. It's a commercial tendency, which is fine, because it's an ecosystem where there's various worlds. We are here in in the oldest festival in the world. It's called Mostra d'Arte Cinematografica. It's not a festival; it's an exhibition. So we cohabit in a world where there's Dune, and there's the movie that wins Cannes or Venice, and we cohabit and we fight many times for the same space. So it's very much about, and it's also coming a little bit back also to what was said just before, and I see now there's a question there. It's not about availability, okay? It's about visibility, because the availability is there. All our films, all our catalogs are available to anybody through the VOD platforms and all of that. All these movies that are produced can be made available, but the visibility, the window, the so-called window space. A long time ago, I discovered, to my surprise, that a platform has a window space exactly as a cinema has. I learned it because, it's not our job, but they have 52 weeks a year like anything else. And this is the same for a platform, for a television, for a pay TV, for a free TV, for everybody. So there is a very high level of production at the moment. There's, I hear that the audiovisual industry in its whole is in, there's no unemployment. It's very difficult to find professionals, and that's good news. What we produce, what we will produce, is driven also by the choices of the winners on the market, and the models. We're seeing, for example, in Italy, that the SVOD, the subscription video on demand model, is today the winner against on demand and all the rest, because it's very flexible, it's all in, eat as much as you can, and it's see when you want, so it's very flexible. So also in terms of the European and the local national intervention, it becomes an equilibrium towards also how we can culturally preserve, which is not a great word when we're talking about the future, but we need to preserve. And
you're thinking about preservation more than anything.
It is important. It is important to preserve our culture because our audiences have asked and has shown. And also commercially, the platforms, or some of them, are coming in our territories and are asking a lot of local product because that's what the audience wants to see.
See, again, European content is quite appealing.
Yes, from one world of globalization, we have shown in many fields of economy that, local is beautiful. And, it's not always bad because then, again, as we said, when the director wants to go all over the world and your film is chosen, you're taking your local film in the world. So there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of elements. It's a very, very complex world.
Absolutely, from local to global. Maybe let's bring in Maria's question. You were actually referring to Stefano a quick seconds ago. With such an enormous choice for audience on what means and circumstances of fruition of audiovisual works, how do you shape your offer to increase your audience and ensure proper visibility to your catalogs? This is definitely part of the question we're actually tackling right here, right now. Who wants to answer next? I mean, again, there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of question on the table, but again, I mean, how do we build this resilient, competitive, and sustainable audiovisual sector for the next decade to come?
Curation and marketing, basically. You need to create better and invest more money on marketing. Stefano was saying, okay, we need to invest more in few titles instead of spending like a small amount of money trying to market 52 films or 200 films per year, 200 releases per year. So then you need to focus and decide what is more important, which film is more suitable for your audience in front of the others. Secondly, it's important to keep in mind that there's no an audience. There's no, okay, this is a cinephile. There's like hundreds of kinds of cinephiles. There's people who love, for instance, classical music plus documentaries about Second World War or about technology. There's people who love Belatar, Tarkovsky, and even, Cronenberg. So then you need to suit your offer to address to a different audience and forget this, okay, this is like cinephile. Filming is a platform for the cinephile. What does cinephile mean nowadays? And thanks to the data, you can somehow tailor your offer and tailor your market for those different type of audience that you already have. And this is an important aspect that we need to address for us to survive or for us to get more market. Then secondly, in terms of cooperation and for filming, filming is available in Portugal and Spain. And we should start looking to international expansion. Why not? Because filming is a platform that maybe we could do some nice work in other European territories. And this is other thing that maybe with the new media support we can address.
Absolutely.
And there's another thing which is important, and this is a small elephant in the room, which are the English subtitles. So it makes no sense for us to release a film in our platform, in our territory, and we are not able to put English subtitles in. We offer English subtitles. Why? Because sales agents and producers say you are not allowed to do it, only for here in Italy, in Spain, Spanish, Catalan, Euskera, and so on, because they are afraid of piracy, the competitors, but it's like an old rule that still maintains, and we need to address this problem for sure.
They don't know the pirate subtitling groups that
Exactly.
subtitle in every language as soon as the film is available.
Oh, yeah. Marisabel, I thought you wanted to jump in the conversation on this one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because I think the issue of accessibility versus visibility is clearly like the major one for us. So as I said, we've had a strategy of making a lot of content available in 6 languages. So of course, the multilingualism is quite important, and everywhere in Europe, and that's been very difficult to do. But we now see that we needed to bring really our strategy to the next level, where we are able to really be visible and make the content visible in every country. It's been the case for several contents, but we want to go a step further. I think for that there are loads of means. So for us, it depends a bit as well on what content we are talking about, because it's not always the same logic between movies or, for instance, we do performing arts as well. So it's you have to tailor that to the kind of content. But I think cooperation on national level works well. So we work, for instance, for the initiative I talked about, Artikino, with VOD platform on a national level. I think we've worked with Filmin in the past as well. We, of course, do events with theaters. That's what I said before, the good relationship we try to have with theaters. These local or national tailored communication campaigns helps a lot to give visibility. Of course, there is then the editorialization and good curation that will be language tailored or territorial tailored. So that's very important, and that's a lot of work if you think of the all diversity of languages and territorial matter in Europe. So I think it's a combination of all that, and I agree with Jaume as well. So the data, of course, play a very important role, and then this aspect of communities throughout Europe. So and you can see that in several fields. It's sometimes quite easy to gather a pan-European audience on opera, for instance, because you have opera lovers all over Europe, and it's how you cooperate with opera houses, for instance, that will help you to reach out to those communities all over Europe. And I think that's a point that you can apply in a different way, but which we applied as well to movie lovers. So our festival is definitely, I think, a label where we try to reach out to cinephile all over Europe. And I think this strategy of communities, which is in terms of communication, of distribution as well, because we try to reach out to several vectors, so being the desktop, the smartphone, the smart TVs, which you have to adapt per country. And that's basically really our goal, to work on this visibility and still have the accessibility in the next few years.
Thank you very much. Jan, do you want to address this question? Again, I mean, we have a lot of different tools here, so we can actually build, again, this audiovisual and cinema sector of the 21st century after a pandemic era.
Well, maybe just a point again on the issue of building visibility for European film, and obviously cinemas are the smallest part of that then. But I think cinemas are, have over the past 10 years realized that they have a big chunk of work to do in the area of marketing, which they historically haven't done. And again, that relationship between distribution and cinemas is one that has great innovation potential when you look at data sharing, when you look at the importance of building up your own customer database with cinemas, and that actually will become much more important once cookies are phased out and movie marketing changes. So there's a big change coming in that area as well. And at the same time, as with everybody in the industry, you have to decide as a theater owner: do you invest all your time into marketing, or are you refurbishing your cinema so that people are coming back? So you're fighting on all ends, and that's a bit of a challenge to get the balance right, I guess.
Internal struggles, right? So let's see more of your question, actually, because you've been, like asking questions on Slido, and that's a very good thing. So I'll see how much I can be a spokesperson for you again on this panel. Maybe take the question we have a lot of questions of Marco out there. So unfortunately, I can't take in-person questions. You're definitely going to have to ask them on Slido. I guess for sanitary reasons, I'm not allowed to actually take in-person questions. I'm so sorry about that. So one of the Marco's questions, the very first one is, some of you mentioned the question of breaking silo. Definitely it was you, Jan. Is this a reaction to the pandemic or an acceleration of a pre-existing trends?
Well, I raised it, so I might as well answer it really quickly. I think it's the acceleration of a trend that's been going on for a long time. And of course, I didn't want to make it appear as if those different subsectors don't work together, but there's always potential for improvement, I guess. Yeah. How do you look at this as a distributor?
Totally. It's a pre-existing trend. There are many pre-existing trends. There has been an acceleration. So cooperation is the key. We've understood a long time ago, all the way from production down to television. Everybody's understood that without collaboration, you just have a product that is, that lands in a world that is much more complex, and with a client base that is extremely complex and extremely divided. The other pre-existing trends is the one about selection. We are a funnel for the world of production that works at a completely different level, especially if you think of all the public money that is pumped into the system. Mm-hmm. And that's, economy, it's work, it's business, it's volume. But then we are the ones facing the audience. And we are the ones that are forced to select, because, again, the other elephant in the room is the fact that not all movies are suitable for distribution. They might not be suitable for distribution at all, or they may be suitable for certain kinds of distribution. Theatrical distribution, it's very small in terms of the numbers. Then you have television distribution, then you have platform distribution, but there is a huge, there is big production and a small gap where everything then goes. So I think that to realize and that not everything can circulate is very important, because many years ago there was this issue: not many European films or audiovisual work travel. I've always said they do travel if they're good. Mm-hmm. It is not that there is the ugly exhibitor, the ugly television, or the ugly distributor. It's just the reality, because an Italian comedy won't travel in Germany, and the other way around.
But if it's actually a great show and a great story to tell, right?
It will, and we have examples. Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, we've promised you to take you behind the scenes of this industry, so it's definitely what we're doing out there with you, Stefano, especially. And brings us to the question of Lucia, actually. If local is beautiful, does it also mean that your local cinemas is also beautiful? And with the pandemics and global actors, what does local means? Which is definitely a good question out there. Is this the idea of local, or the real local experience? I'm not sure about the last point of the question, but still, this is definitely a great question. We used to say that local can grow global, and we have a lot of different examples when it comes to the series part of the industry, especially. Is it the very same thing with films and with theaters? Who wants to answer first?
puzzled by the beautiful question, and I'll just pick up the element around the local cinema and refer to what I said earlier, that the cinema experience is changing rapidly, and if you go today into, I know all of you know, but if you go into a modern theater these days, there's less seats in there, it's more comfortable, the experience is more immersive. In the best way, it's combined with a nice food and beverage offer. It really does compete with all the other leisure experiences, and I guess it's also nicer to experience a beautiful film in a beautiful cinema. And the rest, I'll leave up to the other panelists.
That's wise.
A local platform, for instance, work closely with film schools, with new talent. Somehow we support new talent. We cooperate with not only film festivals, not only movie theaters, but also other cultural entities, cultural companies. So like musical concert halls like Palau de la Música, like El Liceo, like Teatro Real, and with newspapers, with local newspapers, we develop close relationship with local newspapers. Therefore, it's very important to have this kind of local platform, even for us, even for filming. Filming is local in Spain, but also local in Portugal. That means that it's managed by Portuguese people in Portugal, because for sure they will know much better how will work the Portuguese market in front of me, for instance, that I'm from Spain, and I do know better the Spanish market. And this is and there's another key aspect with a platform like filming and for sure like art is the curational aspect. For instance, how we react, how we quickly react to the news. So the local news, like an elections, like a crisis, like the death of an artist, and so on. And this kind of news somehow help us to promote some content, library titles, non-content maybe that hasn't been watched as much as we expected when we release it. And this is important for that, to have a local platform, spending a lot of time on a local editorial content.
It comes back to the beginning of our discussion, publishers. Publishers.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. To be a publisher is being local, because you're near to your audience.
But there's a problem. Not all the distributors are publishers, because and this is a key aspect. Stefan was saying, okay, there's not a lot, not all the movies that have been made. We should find like theatrical distribution. I agree. The problem is when some local distributors finally sign movies that they are so-so. They are not so great because the great movies are acquired by a global platform, by a major studio, or by a competitor. And then, of course, you still need content for yourself, for your company, to have a release. And then you know that the film is so-so, 6 out of 10, saying good. But you will spend money on it, and probably audience will get disappointed of the film. But this is, and until the pandemic, probably this film would perform okay in the cinemas. Nowadays, it's very hard to convince people to go to cinema to watch, to spend 8, 9, 10 euros for watching a so-so movie, a so-so thriller, a so-so biopic, a so-so drama. That's probably they waiting for filming on the other platform to release it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, when you're on the content consumer, part of the equation, I mean, ends up to the question of, okay, don't have an unlimited budget to spend on content, so what am I going to do with this X, X euros I have in my pocket? I mean, this is definitely not pocket money. I mean, in the end of the day, it definitely weighs on the monthly budget.
But the problem is not money, it's time.
Also, I mean, there's content fatigue that we definitely talked about earlier ago. Like, I mean, you guys have to compete in a 24/7 massive content offer, which is, I mean, and you not only have to compete with just pure films content, also with series. And again, those series have their own chronology when we're talking back to the question of media chronology, which is definitely crucial out there to try to understand how windowing can actually work in the next decade.
Even audience demand in our subscribers demand for one new series per week, one exclusive title documentary per week, one exclusive movie per week, not to filming, but to the other platforms. Therefore, I need to provide them for 52 series per year, 52 exclusive 8 titles for film. It's exhausting.
Let's see what Marie-Isabelle has to say about this, and then we'll take a question on diversity. And time flies on this set, so we're probably going to have to get to a conclusion.
Yeah, I wanted to react on how, does every movie deserve or can travel in Europe and can circulate? So I completely agree that's not always the case, of course, but still I think that there are structural issues that really are a problem for some movies to circulate and that could find an audience throughout Europe. So that's what we see, is that I think it was a bit too harsh to phrase it like it was just now, because we see that, of course, co-production, they travel better and they don't always circulate throughout Europe. I think circulation is, that's why I was saying it's not about the theater exploitation, because circulation can be on a longer run. So we see some series, some movies that have been released in several countries a few years ago and that can still be of interest for countries where they were not released. Where I completely agree is that it's really, again, the editorialization, the communication that really needs to be local, where you need, and that's what we try to build here, a European team being able to really react to the news or to the context of one country in order to make this content more visible in this country. But again, I think that's not the case for every content, of course, and there are things that are too national or that can't travel, but still there is a potential of works that are not being exploited enough, and that's our aim.
Thank you very much. Let's take this question as a conclusive one. The question from Marco, another one. The question of diversity is emerging with more and more, as being more and more crucial, of course, but also with many facets or many aspects. Can you highlight how the search for inclusiveness and representativeness affect your business practices? Because yes, diversity also means business at some point. Okay, don't fight to actually answer the question. Yeah, sure. Stefano, my favorite victim.
Your favorite victim. Each player has his ideas, his editorial line. So it's very difficult to speak in general. There are the themes of inclusiveness and representativeness that are, more dear to certain players. I cannot speak for ourselves because we're very diverse, extremely diverse. But I don't see a huge issue. There are cultural limits. In the territories, there are cultural limits that don't allow certain movies to be exploited or shown, especially theatrically or also on television, because there are cultural limits from who you have in front and how you can exploit. Because the important thing that hasn't been said is that there is an economy behind what we do. And, availability is one thing. To make a film available is one thing. But to make the business or the number square and positive at the end of the year is another. And so there are investments that need to be recouped, and this has to be considered. So if your client group is not large enough, if your ancillaries are not strong enough, and this is the problems we face every day on every film, on every show we produce, we distribute. How can we recoup? How can we recoup our investment? How can we, on one side, find an audience, but at the same time, what are the limits of the market itself? Every market is different. So, for example, in our market, there's no place for the art circuit. There's platforms, but they're like supermarkets where there's everything in. So you compete with Dune and with a film that is in competition or is in a sidebar in a festival. And, it's difficult to find it in there.
And you're the boutique part of if platform are supermarkets, you're the boutique compared to the supermarket of content?
Correct. It's the boutique. So you need those boutiques, but you need those boutiques also in terms of broadcasting, of SVOD, of pay, of free, and because those clients that are there, and they can be large groups, don't find an offer. So that's the issue and the answer on how we can achieve a larger inclusiveness and representation.
Time is really flying by. Super quick answer with you, Jan.
I just tackle it from another perspective because it's a broad term. So and only focusing on cinema exhibition, which historically is a very male-dominated sector.
That's right.
And it's slowly changing. I think some of the industry associations across Europe are addressing it with various programs to varying degrees of success. But if, from a personal perspective, observing it over the last years, I think there's a lot changing at the moment, and that's, very positive news.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Super quick answer here.
Basically, VOD platform must play an important role in this inclusiveness in all the European territory. It's not the same Spain than Poland, Spain than Hungary, Spain than Greece. So it's important for us to somehow to promote all these types, all these genres, all these new voices.
It's also a question maybe of European values in this global industry out there. Marie-Sabelle, we'll go to conclusion with you, if you may.
Yeah, of course, I agree with everyone else. It's a very big issue. It has a key role in our new strategic plan that was just accepted. We have a wide range of measures, and it's off-screen and on-screen, and I always underline that because I think what's on-screen depends a lot of what's happening off-screen. And that goes, of course, from diversity, European diversity, to inclusiveness more generally, to gender balance, and of course, in the social responsibility, we have the sustainable aspect that I mentioned before, and that's something, we really want to prioritize for the next few years, so that it will be visible as well in the way we lead our offers.
Thank you very much. Behind the scene of our audiovisual and film industry and sector. Well, I hope we definitely took you backstage for the past 60 minutes together here on stage. I guess all those great panelists deserve some applause. Thank you very much again for your perspective. Thank you so much for your questions on Slido. And yes, this European Film Forum is about to come to an end. And to do so, the concluding remarks will be delivered by Massimiliano Smeriglio, and is definitely a member of the European Parliament, a rapporteur for Creative Europe 2021-2027. Mr. Smeriglio, are you with us? Yes, you are. Wonderful. or not. You know, technology, huh?
Here we are. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I carefully listened to the 2 hours of discussion. It was very useful for me to listen to the position of the stakeholders and those who work in the system. This will definitely help us to work better. Last night, I did something very revolutionary. I went to the cinema. I went to see Mondo Cane. And I think that these are also very important elements of our discussion. How can we encourage a mechanism that encourages people to go out to the theatres after the COVID, with concerning consequences on the market? During the lockdown, there has been a decrease in the income between 30 and 80% of their income for the media. The loss in cinema has been estimated at 110,000 euros a month during the lockdown. The problems faced by productions that, for example, very often cannot count on insurance policies that are suitable to cover events such as the pandemic. And then, of course, the loss of jobs. On all these issues, I think we need to attach our attention. We need to pay attention to the position of the women and men who work in this sector and who suffered so much during the pandemic and during the lockdown. We work also to promote algorithms, but cinemas aren't only algorithms. They are also real people in flesh and blood who add their creativity. They are people who meet, who come together, as we have seen also here in Venice and Cannes before Venice, which is a sign of recovery, of trust. Although there still are a lot of problems, and I'm thinking, for example, of the drastic reduction of the box office, with a decrease in Italy of more than 71% for 2020, the interruption of the supply chain, and the boom of streaming services. The digital entertainment is worth $61.8 billion, which is obviously much more than the figures I gave for the box office when we're thinking of the 2020 figures. There are still issues associated to piracy, which from 69 million has gone up to 200 and something million euros. And during the lockdown, acts of piracy were numerous. And this is just to touch upon the big issues that we face. I think that the European Parliament, the Commission and the Council, and all the European institutions have shown that they are there. They are attempting to contrast the crisis arising from the pandemic. They are also there to promote the culture, and the Parliament, which is a place where people come together to discuss, monitor and provide guidelines. The results are evident, and I'm thinking of the national recovery plans, but I'm also thinking of the ordinary budgets of the Union and the choices that were made there, with the new programming period 2021-2027 for the audiovisual sector, and the availability of major resources. The entire sector can count on 2.4 billion. with an encouraging increase of 60% compared to the 1.4 billion that was envisaged in the previous programming period. So the choices made in the ordinary budget have been excellent, also through Europa Creativa, with specific initiatives for creativity. Excellent choices have also been made in the recovery plans, in the national PNRRs, in the national recovery plans, where we see support to culture, to tourism, the commitments that have been made to relaunch Cinecittà, and the entire discussion that has been mentioned on copyright and the issue of the platforms with the aim of protecting people. In addition to the new action plan for the audiovisual, which was suggested by the Commission in December, with an intervention plan that is very ambitious, aimed at providing concrete support to the businesses working in the audiovisual sector and to facilitate the transformation of the entire sector. It is also positive that the plan puts at the core the digital and the access and a more simple access to financing, encouraging private investments to promote the sector, in addition to all of what is being done in the area of sustainability. Attention is being attached to the entire segment, and we'll see the outcome of this over the next years. Very positive actions are aimed at establishing a dialogue with the audiovisual industry in order to improve access to content throughout the European Union. And then there are ancillary projects which enable the European citizens to have greater capacities. Amongst the 10 actions suggested, I think that the creation of the Media Investor platform is one of the most important, as it can provide a concrete result to the advantage of the industry in Europe, which is characterized by numerous businesses that have the potential to grow internationally. And then, to allow the solid recovery, it is also important to put at the centre legality and the right exploitation of works, to provide a framework of certainty which will enable us to go back to the numbers that we were seeing before the pandemic. To draw to a conclusion, it is important to focus on the entire value chain, to focus especially on expertise and professional capacities. Production will have to resort to new technologies to better use the time made available, to use the techniques, and I'm thinking of the new technologies of augmented reality and virtual reality, which are often already used, that provide the immersive environments that is so attractive amongst the audience. I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much for these 2 intense hours in which you have exchanged a lot of information. I will try to keep open all the channels to welcome all proposals with all the stakeholders of the sector. Enjoy the festival, and thank you once again.
Thank you very, very much for those conclusive remarks. And yes, that's the way our European Film Forum Mostra edition is coming to an end. Thank you so much for the perspective of our incredible panelists and guests today. Thank you very much for you attending here in person at the Excelsior, and thank you very much to those following us on live streaming on our platform europeanfilmforum.eu. Well, we'll see you at another event for more on the European Film Forum. Thank you so much.